Hey, I think it'd be cool if you could kind of explain this idea of these. I think maybe it was you and Mr. Infinity talking about these 20 movements or 20 exercises to kind of show, I guess, not just, in my opinion, like these would be awesome for not just performance, but for like longevity, health. And when you started mentioning some of the movements, I was like, shit, I should see if I'm on point with some of those.
Sweet. Well, I don't mind sharing the knowledge. I'll break down all the 20 movements we work on and like the standards that we go for. The idea for this came from coaching people in person. I was already known as being a knee coach before social media. So people would come to my gym. They were looking to make a transformation for the knee. They couldn't play their sport, wanted to get out of the cycle of surgeries, get back to play their sport, dunk, things like that. And I started to notice that the missing mental point for them was realizing that, hey, something like a backward slide may get you out of pain. But what we're going for is actually like a measurable long-term change. And that wasn't really thought about with knees. You think about, oh, that worked so good, I'm out of pain. Well, I want a measurable change much greater to make you more bulletproof. And it doesn't mean it's an absolute, but we're seeing really strong correlations. When you start seeing person after person who can't do what they want to do with their knee, and then they're getting to certain measurables, and then you're seeing them able to break through and play their sports and things of that nature, it started to formulate different standards for us. A standard doesn't mean that's what someone can do who's like a world-class athlete at that sport. They might be able to. What it really means is it's where you're going to get the bulk of the gain from getting to. Like you could go farther past it, but just by getting and maintaining that, you'll probably be able to succeed really well in your sports.
And sometimes hyper focusing in on one thing, such as a deadlift, and becoming super proficient at it, could not leave enough time for some of the other exercises you're going to talk about.
Yeah. And we've all heard of this sort of 80% of the gain from 20% of what's that?
Oh, like 80-20 rule?
The Pareto principle?
Yeah.
Yeah, something along those lines where, all right, if we're talking about a knee exercise, if you want to get to like your absolute genetic limit, I haven't found that's really where the bulk of the gain is going to come from. Mm-hmm. So on average, these things are more like a 2-year journey. So not a 20-year journey or a 10-year journey, but like a 2-year journey that I think you can get the bulk of the result. Mm-hmm. But then can you maintain that? So my training partner, Derek, he's 45 and can still dunk. He's not trying to be world-class at any one of these 20. He's trying to maintain these 20.
Derek,
Mr. Infinity.
Oh, okay.
Sorry.
Yeah, first name Mr., last name Infinity.
Yep. Derek Williams, a.k.a.
You got to pull him up, Andrew. People got to see this man's profile.
Got to protect him sometimes and call him by his regular name, I see.
Looks like he barely turned 23.
Yeah.
So, like someone could go all out for one type of lift, and they would have to maybe put a lot of risk into it. And so we're really trying to make these things that are attainable, safe to achieve, but then can you maintain all these different qualities? So for him, like for someone 45, the fact that he can do these 20 things, like it might be 1 in a million, but no one of them by itself would I say is like that shocking. Mm-hmm. So if we take it from the bottom to the top, we use, number one, we use 8 lower, 8 upper, and then 4 extra for flexibility. You have 20. If we start from the bottom, number one for the lower body, we use a tib bar, 20% of body weight, 15 full reps. It might be kind of tedious to get, but in the $100 or less range, the fact that you can now have a measurable that's going to last you the rest of your life that you can use with free weight, I'm still a huge fan of the tib bar. So that's number one. Number 2 and 3 are calf raises from a straight leg and a bent knee position, a quarter of body weight, additional load for 12 reps. These are very attainable things, but if we even take that tib bar, you'll see that most people who've been lifting weights a long time are nowhere near being able to do 20% of body weight for 15 reps. It's not that much. It's very realistic to get to. Mm-hmm. The idea is the body was designed to work right, but now if we spend 10, 20 years training certain things but avoiding others, we can get out of balance. So I think within 2 years, the average person could actually get to all these standards. Then as we come up, we get to that ATG split squat, which I think is the king of mobility for the lower body. That's my opinion, coaching a lot of people. I don't think that any of the things I'm talking about are necessarily the easiest to get into and access, and I'm constantly working at these.
Why do you think it's the king?
Because you're getting full range of motion on the front leg while also stretching the hip flexors on the back leg, but not just stretching them. You're stretching them and you're under load because your back knee's not resting on the floor. So the fact that you can get that ankle and knee bending on the front leg while also, what is the other common option to stretch the hip flexors under load? It's not a common thing to do, to stretch them under load. So over time, I'm seeing that for not just the knees, but also the back, this continuous, consistent loading of the hip flexors in a stretched position is huge to offset the posture being pulled this way.
And also to be able to get yourself out of kind of a, I don't want to say, I guess it's a tough position, not necessarily a bad position, yeah.
Yeah, maybe the toughest position.
And that the shin on that back leg, I think it's important to note how low the shin is on that back leg.
Yeah, and that's not, there we go. We're watching the screen. Yeah. So it's a very interesting thing because when I was recovering my knees, this looked like the toughest position, but it's actually mastering the toughest positions that have made my knees so bulletproof now. Over 10 years, I've never had a knee setback, and I play basketball like a maniac.
This movement's obviously been around for a while. I don't know if I heard of it or seen it done quite to the extreme that you're able to do it, but is this something that you maybe picked up from Charles Poliquin?
Yeah, and has a cool history. Originally, some people were actually catching the bar in Olympic weightlifting like this. So they're catching the bar in a split stance.
There's pictures of that. I've seen that before, yeah.
Yeah. And then Charles Poliquin, who strength coached likely the most Olympic medalists in history. This was a go-to tool for him and treating it as a weighted progression. So for me, with my downfall being knees and lack of mobility, this became to this day, it's the movement I'm most grateful for. But yes, that would look like, for people who have mobility problems and knee problems, that would almost look like the worst position.
And let me ask you this too, about the ATG split squat. What have you seen because, a lot of people are sedentary, a lot of people are working offices. So, they stand up and they have kind of shortened hip flexors. Yeah. And one of the amazing benefits of this is it'll help bring some length to that area, but you can strengthen it at the same time. Have you found it to be a struggle for people to progress that movement?
I'll give you a protocol right now.
There we go.
I've had such a good time. I was on this podcast first 2.5 years ago, and the amount of work I've done with Mark on the mentoring and mental side, I've just never stopped looking for these kind of solutions for people. Like, it's one thing to think that you're right about something, but all that matters in the end is the results that you get. So bring me that chair right there. And so the office worker, I've found, can start this just by mastering the position, not even moving. So you'll see here with this chair, for someone who's listening,
you can video it.
I'm going to put my foot on the chair, and then I'm going to put my hands on the top of the chair, and then I'm going to stretch my back leg, and I'm going to hold it.
He's getting into like a split squat position with his front leg up on just which would be like an ordinary folding chair.
Yep. So my front leg is in a full bend, and my back leg, I'm actively stretching. So I'm like contracting the rear glute there. So 30 seconds each side.
That makes it tough. When you flex the butt cheek on the back side, you get a crazy stretch in the hip.
Yeah. That's one thing that people forget to do. They forget to flex that back glute.
Yeah, and it really helps lengthen. I think it helps strengthen as well, just even being in those positions. You get more familiar with them.
Yeah. So in a perfect world, you would have something to then measure 2 inches lower and 2 inches lower and 2 inches lower. Well, I've been working on a prototype like that for the last year. So I've been working. Look, I don't like talking about things that aren't out yet. It's kind of a bummer to tell people, hey, this isn't out yet. But we at least today got to see a couple things that are out, the backward treadmill, the seated tib machine. There needs to be a scalable, measurable mobility box. You walk into the gym, you got station for bench press, a station for this. Where's the station for measurable mobility change over time?
You can do it anywhere.
Yep.
And then people decide not to do it at all.
Exactly. But we have to look at what's working, what is getting the result, what are people using. There are stations set up for the things that people want results for. And so we need the same thing. The ATG system, when I came on here 2.5 years ago, was very hard to apply. Well, that's what I've been working on. That's what I'm going to keep working on, is giving every single piece of the system that same user friendliness. What was it like for you guys today, hopping on that seated tib machine compared to the tib bar, which I'm saying the standard on tib bar, 20% body weight. We found it lines up the same on the seated tib with 10% per side. What do you guys honestly think in gyms? Do you honestly think people are going to use tib bars? Or like if that was sitting there and a tib bar was sitting there, what do you think?
Yeah, tib bar is something that probably gets pushed off to the side a little bit. Maybe not everyone has the same love with getting better at the kind of finer things, increasing the strength of your hands and strengthening the strength of your tibs. And if you have an easy machine that you can slide in and out of, it doesn't take much thought, doesn't hurt at all, doesn't take much of a setup. You just get right into it and you don't have to think about it.
Be on your phone. Yeah. That's what people love.
Yeah, exactly.
Or like Mark was doing today, and he was pumping curls, bicep curls, while doing
trying to
tibs.
sneak in a pump,
Maybe the sexiest exercise of all time, because apparently curls for the girls and chicks dig big tibs.
There we go.
So on the seated tib. But if we look at the actual factors of it, like Mark said, he's able to sit down comfortably, get into position. He's able to get a full stretch, full contraction, able to go to failure measurably. Anything you can safely and measurably push yourself to failure on, you end up making a lot of strength progress.
Very easy to load the weight on there too, whereas like the tib bar, again, those are great tools. I think they're awesome, but it is a little harder to like load the weight and get it set on there with the collar and everything.
Totally. So, and big credit to Bert Soren of Sorenex. I went in with that idea because he created the first dual seated calf seated tib. But when you see that, it's a bit hard to know where to start. And gyms already have seated calf machines. So we're just trying to supply the same user friendliness of a seated calf. I'd say it's even more user friendly than a seated calf machine because you actually don't have to do as much adjustment.
Slide your legs on in there.
Yeah, give it that same, yep. So we mentioned tib, straight leg calf, bent knee calf. Now we're talking about ATG split squat. To me, the standard is really just maintaining the ability to do that on flat ground. It doesn't matter how much the front heel lifts as long as the front ball of the foot is down. So for someone like me, I like to load that a lot of the time. Sometimes I like to do it body weight for high reps. Sometimes I like to do pauses. Sometimes I like to load it. So if you think about Derek at 45, man, if he maintains that, my mom is 69 and can do that, and she can sprint. So we see a very high correlation, but I'm actually not saying on that one how much weight you have to add. I think that's a personal thing. And we've done a couple posts recently on my Instagram. So if you're looking for B-roll of Derek, he just posted one yesterday. So
yesterday.
We'll keep coming up these standards. Well, you can see his sled class video is pretty cool. And then that there, he's showing one of the 20 standards he maintained. Yeah, sled class is pretty rad. This on YouTube
I saw
is my most viewed video of any platform of any kind. This video has over 6 million views already on YouTube in less than a month.
So the ATG split squat, what's the next exercise?
Well, now you can put those things together into a squat. So the ATG split squat, you're working one side at a time. Oftentimes people dislike deep squats, and it's often because of differences between hips, ankles, knees. Any difference in your mobility or pain or past injury history, you might feel that on a deep squat. Often on a deep squat, when someone's like, oh, I don't like a deep squat, it's maybe they're thinking about their left knee or their right hip or something like that. So we use that ATG split squat, the goal being flat ground. I'll show one for the YouTube video, just a position they could mimic. So this is very simple. Like my mom can do that.
Yeah.
Derek can do that. The average person can't do that. We then strength train from that. Putting it together into a squat, we use the slant board and we use floss bands on the knee to reduce the pain and give a massage around the joint and build up the strength in a deep squat position. But this is very light, like with your body weight and then gradual dumbbell loading. We use that as a stepping stone to then, this is a great recap right here. We use it, this video right here is, you can see it. So we're showing, I'm standing on a slant board. So that puts my knees in a position to go over the toes and go down and get stronger. But I'm using floss bands, which pin down so you have less pain, and they give a massage. Now it showed body weight, then it showed dumbbell loading. And now you can see how I exercise today. I stand on a slant board and I squat with a bar. And now I can do crazy deep knee bends, and I can play my sport as hard as I want and dunk and all this stuff. Mm-hmm. But I go from these super gentle levels over time. Now I can just jump into anything. But it's this step-by-step process building to where then you're squatting with a bar, but with full range of motion. So your own body weight in load, full range of motion, for me is a standard for athletes.
Yeah.
But Derek we have both of our versions on the app because there's just a couple differences that we will see over time. I'm in my 30s, he's 45. So for him, it's 25% body weight, but in dumbbell form on the slant board, 20 reps with the elbow staying above the thigh. So that's like full range of motion for the knee. So what he's trying to maintain the rest of his life is just a quarter body weight in load, but it's 20 reps standing on slant board, full range of motion.
Yeah.
Coming up from there, we shift to and for me, for athletes, I simply progress that. Like I actually keep that in the program. So I still do the dumbbell squats for high reps. Mm-hmm. And then on another day, I load with the bar. And I think the athlete should be able to go full range of motion. I think an athlete should be able to stand on a slant board, 100% of your body weight in a front squat, and do 5 reps. Rack the bar, put it on your back, 5 more reps. Like that should be pain-free, easy. That's the whole idea, is that every standard is like, you're not in any pain to do it.
Yeah.
These are abilities that you maintain. Time will tell, but this keeps us honest by me really pursuing to the best of my abilities in my 30s, these 20 standards, and maybe some slight differences for him. So if there's any differences, I'll let you know. Flipping to the back of the knee is 5 full Nordics. If you search Marty St. Louis Nordic on YouTube, you will see the form that we mimic. We just mimic Marty, 5 of these reps. It means that your glutes are contracting first. That lifts your abs off the bench, because if you pull with your hamstrings first and your chest is still on the bench, you don't really know how much of your upper body you're lifting. So for B-roll, Andrew, just YouTube search Martin St. Louis.
Yeah, people
Nordic.
do it a lot of times in like a 2-part lift, it looks like.
Yeah, so I don't think you ever have to add weight to it.
We got grams.
Yeah, you can see grams,
All right.
but look below that one. Below that was actually Marty St. Louis. All right, so here's Marty St. Louis. At age 37, he led the league in scoring. To this day, he's the oldest player to ever lead the NHL.
Whoa.
Did you see that form?
Yeah.
To this
Started
day,
with the
I am
glutes.
chasing that form. Now, he even adds some stuff to it, but I'm only talking about 5 of the reps where he explodes up, and then we fight down. We keep it very simple. And you'll see he'll finish out his set, and then he'll fight down on the last rep.
Yeah.
So there's a lot you could put into it. For me, it's just being able to maintain 5 reps the way he did on that opening rep, fighting down, repeating 5 times. For this one to be scalable, you need the front end of the Nordic bench to be able to lift considerably. So I could jump right into this on a flat bench, but in my gym, dating back about 10 years, we had plyo boxes set up, and for every client, we would elevate the angle of the bench to the person. So we'd know. So moms were doing Nordics, and so were NFL players side by side. And so I would know for moms, okay, she can do 24 inches elevation, 18 inches. So just about everyone can Nordic, meaning if you're standing up right now, and if you just lean forward a little bit, like that's the concept when you start to realize that every motion does scale to some level if you set up the right equipment for it.
Yeah.
The world's wasn't really set up for ATG to be comfortable. I'm working on trying to make that comfortable. But 5 reps, mimicking Marty St. Louis, he went from undrafted to Stanley Cup MVP. And his record still stands. He's the oldest player to ever lead the NHL in scoring. And his strength coach, Ben Prentice, who was a student of Charles Poliquin, just like I was, Ben Prentice was quoted as saying there was over 20 pro hockey players in his gym, and Marty was the only one who could do that. And when I saw that, I went, I need to be able to do that. And 2.5 years later, I did. We floundered around trying to figure that out. And it just took time to realize, just do the exact same form as him. Just elevate the front end of the Nordic bench and do the exact same form.
Yeah.
And that worked. And I've helped tons of people get there. So you can see now some of the formings. This was all before I was on social media. Some of the formings of this idea of standards was you take an athlete who literally cannot. The knee is just on either side, not as strong as it could be. You make a measurable change over time, and then they go out and life is different. Doesn't mean it's perfect, but it's fundamentally different because of the work they put in. So this is why I got obsessed with standards, and I've always been obsessed with standards. They're not trying to be perfect, but they're measurable changes that work for most people. So we've covered 6 now for the lower body. The 7th, and Nsima and I could probably do a whole podcast about this topic. The 7th, now we're moving up, because it's lower body, but we're moving up into the lower back. It also addresses the inner thighs, and it's a seated good morning. We have a mobility standard of being able to get your abs to the bench without your back rounding. So to me, the foundation of a bulletproof back is incredible ability to not round the spine. So even though I'm kind of known for the Jefferson curl, we build this on a foundation of ability to resist rounding the back with incredible flexibility and strength. So it's 2/3 body weight, 10 reps, abs to the bench. An inclined bench. Mark, you come from a powerlifting background. You ever do standing good mornings?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
So imagine for a beginner doing standard. Oh, this will be a good video because it'll show the regression. But Mark, I want you to think about a beginner doing standing good mornings. And think about that point, though, when they lean over. It's kind of a vulnerable position. So what I do is I use an inclined bench. You sit on it, and then you can adjust the angle. Andrew, see if you can find, there's going to be some point in there where the bench angle adjusts. So you're actually lowering your abs down to a bench. You have a stopping point. So it stops you. Maybe it was at the, it'll be.
I'll keep searching.
It was probably at the very beginning, actually. There it is. So it was.
Oh, I didn't see.
Most of my videos will show. So here you go. So Mark, here you go. Here's the bar in the back. But I'm using that to measure my mobility progress. It gives me a stopping point. So I believe that the ability of the hips to hinge is the foundation of bulletproofing the back.
It feels good to do it seated like that, too. You get to really kind of push your butt back and push into your hamstrings. And a regular good morning sometimes just doesn't feel great.
Right, and I'm not...
Feels a little awkward, I guess.
Right, and I actually have nothing against any movement. I'm just trying to find routes for people to follow. So I think a standing good morning is awesome. I love standing good mornings, but it's much harder to help someone progress to a bulletproof back. For me, in my experience, when I could use an inclined bench, measure their progress from a seated position. So now they can go from 45 degrees to 30, 15, all the way down to flat, if they do, but you don't have to force your way to anything. And so it gives you a stopping point. So again, it's fundamentally harder to hurt yourself, but you're still able to build up those lower back muscles, glutes, inner thighs. I also think you'll notice if you haven't done seated good mornings, you'll notice it stretches the inner thighs a lot.
It does.
In cultures where we stop deep squatting, I think those inner thigh tissues are getting just way too tight. And so most people, when they do the seated good morning, you're thinking about a back bulletproofing exercise. You should know you'll probably feel in your inner thighs more than your back at first, because that's probably, your back is probably not as far from what it should be as your inner thighs are from what they should be, because we stop resting in deep squat positions. So seated good morning, flat bench, 2/3 body weight, 10 reps, no pain or strain. Covered 7 lower body standards. The 8th being then, everything we talked about so far was really other than like you're putting force in the ground, being able to handle that force. What seems to be the finishing touch is like you still got those hip flexors to lift up your legs. And it was undeniable for me. I would strap people up to a cable machine, have them hold on to something immovable behind them. So I have measurable load, and I can measure, okay, now lift your knees and let's see how strong your hip flexors are. And like go to failure till they can't get that hamstring to close the calf. So I could measurably see. And it was undeniable in the gym. The people fastest at top end speed were just way stronger in those hip flexors. Maybe this sounds like common sense that the people faster at top end speed were stronger at picking up their leg. That's what I found. You can go, like, there hasn't been a study on it. Go check it out.
Yeah.
These standards were not based, I had really never looked at a study, to be honest. I looked at some now to just see, is there actual backing of what I'm doing? And fortunately, there's actually some pretty cool backing of everything that I do. But the standards weren't based on that. They were just based on observing hundreds of athletes in person and then observing older people. And so for those hip flexors, I actually think it relates more to the aging person and women who have had children. Apparently 95% of people after the age of 30 will never sprint again. So even if you thought you were still doing leg day, but the muscles that pick up your legs are not getting stimulated enough. So you start to develop this deviation. Now below the belly button, you're getting proportionally weaker. We're seeing all these like hernias and hip problems, and it doesn't make that is a deviation from the natural design of the body. Sprinting should remain part of life. You got to sprint because of danger. Now we don't have to sprint because of danger. So apparently, just about everyone over the age of 30 stops sprinting. And Mark can relate. How many people stop running?
Yeah.
What's going to happen to your hip flexors when you stop running? So
Weak.
yeah. So we saw this as a broad thing. We also saw sometimes that if an athlete was genetically slower and then put in the work on weights, but still was struggling and they were still slow at top end speed, we would find that this would help remedy the situation with strengthening hip flexors. So our original standard is lying with a cable machine. You can actually see it in Mr. Infinity's most recent post from yesterday. You can see him demonstrating the standard. So this is an example of one that if he did not maintain the standard, he would not be moving around at 45 years old like this. His legs come off the ground really quick when you see him. The thing when you see him play basketball, yeah, we throw in a dunk, but it's not really about the dunk. It's that he's so light on his feet and he seems like a guy in his 20s. He doesn't have that. Look, some people are tall and slow and can still get up and dunk, but he's very light on his feet. Yeah. But he's strong in the muscles that pick up his feet. So half body weight, 20 reps, hamstrings cover calves. And I'm showing there in the video the alternative, which is hanging from ab straps and being able to lift your knees to your elbows at least 20 times. Derek is hardcore, so he said 30 in the video. I didn't know he was going to say 30. I would say at least 20 reps strict where you're hanging from a chin-up bar. Your thighs never go below 90 degrees like this, Mark, and you raise up here 20 times. 90% of people can't do that, but within 2 years could. So each of these standards, so those are the 8 lower body standards. Each one in itself is not shocking, but you add them up. So each one itself is something that like 90% of people can do. 10% is still a lot of people. Now you start to add these up and you're getting closer to like 1% of people. But each one, I would argue, is just trying to maintain the natural balance of the body. These are common areas where we lose strength or that we don't train in the weight room. So our body adapts with that area weaker than it should be. Like I showed, like if you look at the seated good morning, when we stop in cultures where we stop resting in a deep squat position, the inner thighs get really tight. So now maybe we're not strengthening the back in a deep position. Yeah. So all of it's just trying to store the natural design of the body. Those are the 8 lower body standards.
Got it.